Are you thinking about buying a house, but you are terrified because you are hearing all the horror stories or glamour stories, if you're a seller, about houses selling $50,000 or $100,000 over asking price? Now today, we are going to talk about some of the common misconceptions about listing price. We're going to talk about some of those things, and at the end, I'm going to give you a couple tips and tricks that might actually help you get an offer accepted for listing price and not above. Hi, my name is Jamie Eklund, and I'm a realtor here in the beautiful state of Colorado. Now, on this channel, we talk about all things Colorado related, but we focus our attention on some of the real estate. We look at different cities, we look at different neighborhoods, we talk about the market. And if these are things that interest you, then hit the subscribe button and hit that bell notification to be notified next time I post a video. Now, I get calls from people all the time asking me what life is like here in Colorado. If that's you, then give me a call. If you're thinking about moving to Colorado, give me a call. I would love to talk to you. I'd love to answer any of the questions that you have. I would rather you call me and we'll have a candid conversation about what Colorado is like, the pros and the cons. And you may decide, you know what, Colorado isn't the place for me. Or you may decide, you know what, some areas of Colorado aren't the place for me, but there are a lot of places that would fit me really well. That's usually the case. I'd love to talk to you, and I'd love to help you process this decision so that it would be a very good decision for you and for your family for many years to come. All right, so today we are going to have a conversation that I have with almost all of my buyers, and it's the discussion of listing price. We all hear the stories of houses being sold for X number of dollars over list price. I even saw an article, I think it was a house over in LA that sold for $1 million over the listing price, which is crazy, right? I mean, this is absolutely insane. But part of why we're hearing these stories is there's a misconception about what list price is and why properties get priced at a certain price point. So what is list price? Okay, well, list price is just what the seller decided to offer for their property. But that doesn't mean the seller would actually accept, at least not in this market, a full price offer. So if they list their property for $350,000 and they get a full price offer, everything's exactly what they asked for, there's a good chance in this market they won't even accept that because they are expecting more. But that's not all the time. And this is where I have to have a conversation with buyers because every property is different. Every situation is different. Every circumstance is different. And all the motivations can be very, very different for the buyer and for the seller. And sometimes the list price, what that seller has decided to put their house on the market for, can be an indication of what some of the motivating factors that seller had for listing their house. Like for instance, if a house is, let's say the value, and we'll get to that in a second, is worth $350,000, and the seller lists it for $375,000, that seller might be thinking in their mind, you know what? I would sell it if I can get more than the house is worth. Okay, there's a lot of sellers out there, quite frankly, that are doing that. So we have to ask ourselves, so how do we position ourselves as a buyer in order to procure that particular property? There's some tips and tricks that I think a buyer can use to their advantage to get that property. But the buyer has to decide, is that property worth $375,000 to them? If it's not, then you keep looking. You just keep looking. Now, let's also say that $350,000 house was priced at $330,000 or $340,000. Well, you may be asking yourself, well, why would you price a property that's worth $350,000, why would you price it lower than that? Well, here's why, and we're seeing this a lot, is because when you price it lower, then you're going to get a lot of activity on that property and you're going to get a lot of offers. Most of them, probably all of them, will be over asking. I ended up seeing a property in a particular small city that shall remain nameless, and the property was listed at $375,000. We were able to get in and buy that property at $375,000. The property itself was probably worth $370,000. At least the appraisal came back at $370,000. So they had the property priced too high, but we still bought it at $375,000. Now across the street, there was another property that we saw, and quite frankly, it wasn't in as good of condition, but it had a few things that the property we bought didn't. Now that property was priced at $340,000, but it sold for $400,000, $60,000 over asking, and $25,000 more than what we paid for our property. So you ask yourselves, which is the better strategy? Well, a lot of people are going with list your property under what it's actually worth, and it will drive attention and it will drive that value or that purchase price or that offer price, as it is here, it will drive it up even more. And this is a very effective strategy. Now, some sellers, they're just trying to get the most money they possibly can for their house. And you may be asking yourself, well, isn't that all sellers? Well, the reality is no, that isn't all sellers. Some sellers start out that way, but they have one or two contracts that fall apart for various reasons. And then they put the property on for the third time and they're so tired of it, they just want the contract to get to close. And so if you can come in and convince them that your property's or your offer is good and you're good for everything, you may get something accepted right there, right? There's a tip. The other thing is there's a lot of other factors that a seller may be looking for. A post-closing occupancy, where they actually can rent their own property back after the closing for a period of up to 60 days. That's pretty appealing to a lot of sellers, especially if they're building a new house, or if they don't even have a house picked out that they're going to move to. They may need some time, and that may be worth a lot for that particular seller. So that's some things to keep in mind. Every situation is different. But let's not go down that rabbit trail just yet. Let's talk about the difference between list price and the value. Okay, now value I'm defining as what is the property really worth? Because I can offer $1 million for a $350,000 property, that doesn't necessarily make that property worth that. So there's some factors that go into the value. Now, an appraiser is going to give you their opinion on value, and their opinion is usually very objective. What's the square footage? What are the number of bathrooms? What are the number of bedrooms? What style? How old is the house? What is the condition? And then what does that compare to all the other houses in the same area that have sold that are of like size and style and age to that particular property? That's what our appraiser is going to do. And that's still something that you should do as a buyer, or hopefully your agent's doing this for you, is putting together some comps so that you understand, okay, I'm looking at this property that's $350,000, but all the other properties have sold for much higher than that. So this property is probably underpriced, and therefore I should expect to pay more than asking price because the property is actually worth more than asking price. Asking price is just that, it's a marketing tool. The other thing you should take into consideration, that's the objective value. There's also a subjective value. Now, what is the property worth to you? Now, this is hard for some people because, myself included, I like to look at everything in dollars and cents, and if the property objectively isn't worth that, then subjectively it isn't really worth that to me either. But there are certain instances where you just want a property in a particular neighborhood. Maybe it's not a high-priced neighborhood, you just like that neighborhood for whatever reason. Maybe you have friends there, maybe you have family there. So that property might be actually worth more to you. Maybe a particular floor plan or layout of a property is more desirable to you than another one. And you walk in there and it has it that makes that property worth a little bit more to you. Maybe that property has disgusting flooring and they're offering to have it replaced. Maybe that's really valuable to you because you know exactly what kind of flooring you would want in your property. There's lots of different things that go into play when it comes to the subjective value of a particular property. But both of these need to be considered when it comes to putting in an offer. So if you're putting in an offer at that $350,000 mark, or a property that's worth that, you may want to put in more if the property is actually worth more to you individually. Understand that the appraiser is still going to come in and say, well, the property is still only worth $350,000. And that's where appraisal gaps come in, and there's a long story there. Feel free to contact me if you want more information on that. Your real estate agent is going to be able to navigate those things for you. But when it comes to differentiating the difference between list price and property value, those are some things that you need to take into consideration. Trust me, it's going to help you down the road. And yes, I know everybody is still going to say, well, I sold my house for $50,000 over asking. Well, you listed your house for $50,000 below value, so you really sold your property what it was worth. That doesn't sound as cool, that doesn't sound as sexy, and so we're not bragging about selling our properties for what it's worth. So keep those things in mind. Now, I'm in the process of putting together a book specifically designed to help buyers navigate this process. Now, the book is still in the publishing stage, but I'm taking some pre-orders for it, and it's something I'm giving away for free while supplies last. I don't want to make money on book royalties. I'm trying to provide a resource for people to help them navigate this difficult season of real estate, and this is just one way that I'm doing that. So if you're interested in getting a copy of this book when it's completed, I'm putting a link down in the description. Go ahead and fill out that information, and I will be sure to send you one once it's complete.